Hey y'all, welcome back to Words of Wokism. This will be number 33, and the word today is construct. We're not talking about building with blocks. We're not talking about building anything tangible, really. We're talking about knowledge and the dominant educational theory of the 20th century. And it's looking like the 21st century, at least so far. And that is constructivism. If you've never heard of this before, welcome to the world of constructionism. Some of you who are teachers like me, or you went to ed school, or you've just studied child development and learning theory and all this, pedagogies and all that, you know names like Piaget, you know names like Vygotsky, and so on. And what it is, in the simplest terms, is the theory that human beings do not acquire knowledge passively. It's not like the teacher can just go, here, open your brain, here's some knowledge. And most of us would hear that and say, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We don't just passively receive knowledge, right? I mean, we have to do things. And, how many times have you even said to yourself, I learn best by doing. When I do it, then I remember it. I do it, I learn it, okay? That also can be true in many situations. So Piaget, a Swiss psychologist, researcher, et cetera, 100 years ago, came up with stages of development, stages of learning. You have, you've probably heard about it if you took any courses on this in college. And I think to a large degree, he was right about the phases that human beings go through. And, a lot of it aligns with, my personal experience as a mom, as a person working in, both childcare and teaching. But the problem, I think, that we're facing right now is this theory of how human beings learn, how we learn, has been way, way overblown and overgeneralized. So we've taken the kernel of truth that we do, to a degree, construct knowledge by doing and experiencing. And, we learn in that way. An entire system of education has been built around that being the way that people learn. And it has crowded out any real conversations about what you might call more classical or traditional styles of teaching or instruction. And it makes it impossible for us to talk about the downsides. The other problem with constructivism is that it's been politically co-opted. I don't know if political is the right word, but it's certainly ideologically co-opted by the postmodernists who want to believe, and who actually do believe, but they'd like the rest of us to believe, that everything is constructed. They're also social constructivists. They believe that every single thing you see that you might take for granted is real, or having some objective reality around it. Like, for example, what a woman is, what a man is, even to a certain extent, the roles that we might play in human society. No, they reject all of that. All of it has been constructed, including the knowledge we have about it. We can't just observe things and trust it. We have to sit there and critique it and tear it apart, because everything that is was constructed by somebody else. And if these somebody else's were less than perfect people, by the constructivist definition, then all that is bad. And we have to tear it down and reconstruct it to look like what? I don't know. But then it will have been constructed by other people, and then we'll have to tear that down, and so on. Especially in the social situation, because you're never going to get however many billions of people to agree on what human society should be like. And if we're constructing our reality one at a time, that's going to be a lot of conflict. Okay, if we can't agree on certain things being objectively true or right or good or beneficial or whatever, we're going to be in for a world of hurt. So, that's, and I'm grossly oversimplifying this. So those of you out there who are, philosophers and experts in social constructivism, please don't tear me apart. This is Words of Wokism. We're condensing it, oversimplified. So, but I think parents watching will be like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah. Okay. You've probably heard from your school, your kid's school, your student will co-create the knowledge with their teacher. That's their way of telling you the teacher isn't teaching. In a nutshell, that's what they're telling you. This person that you call teacher, that you imagine is teaching things, like has knowledge and is imparting the knowledge to your child, or at a minimum, taking some pretty big steps to help your child learn those things, like not just go into the deep end and swim. Experience it, construct the knowledge of swimming. That's not what's happening, but that is what's happening. In fact, it is what's happening. And most literature out there right now about how to teach and how kids learn, and most of the ways that new teachers are being taught, is essentially teaching them how not to teach. Meaning how to not teach, how to go into a classroom and essentially make the child so uncomfortable that they have to figure stuff out and thereby construct the knowledge that they will need to have to function in the world. And this can be as ridiculous as not answering a question. There are actually books and training courses that teach new teachers not to answer a 6-year-old's question about something. It could be something very simple. Well, how do I get started with the lesson? Or what do I do first? Or how do I find the I don't know. How do you figure it out? I don't know. Figure it out. It's cruel. All right. Now, you might be thinking, and if you're a homeschooling parent or you're somebody, like me who loves Montessori, where kids are left to do kind of experience things and learn things on their own, self-directed learning, you might think, well, I don't really see the problem. Well, again, context is everything. So the problem with the constructivists in a school environment with 20 to 30 kids in class, and they're supposed to cover certain material by the end of the week, month, year, material they will be tested on so that everybody else can see that it's working, like something's happening in these classrooms, and they will be evaluated really as a group. They'll be evaluated individually, but then that number gets aggregated and we see scores, and we don't know whether Johnny Davis got a 100 and this other person got a 20. It's all put together. Average score is this. Letting them just fly by the seat of their pants and figure shit out on a consistent basis leaves a lot of kids behind. They're coming in with all kinds of different, they're at all different places. Some kids come into school reading. Some kids don't know their ABCs. I was a first grade teacher, I can tell you that. Even in first grade, kids didn't know how to handle a scissors, and that's more common today than ever before because they're on screens from the time they're born and they have no fine motor coordination anymore. So, write with a pencil and form your letters is really challenging for the kid with no fine motor skills. If the child has, budding dyslexia, even a bigger problem. If they've got other kinds of learning difficulties, another problem. If they're super duper genius, crazy smart, and they're way far ahead of everybody else, and figuring things out for them at the level that you are offering them opportunities to figure things out is just so boring they don't even bother, you might think they're retarded. Believe it or not, that's what happened to Thomas Edison. I don't know if his teacher was a constructivist, probably not, but he was so far ahead in his brain, and he was saying that they literally said, school, there's no point for him to be in school, he is too dumb, and kicked him out. They don't do that anymore. They just let the kid flounder and be bored and turn into a behavior problem. But I hope you're getting the picture that if the teacher just gives kids a bunch of things that they have to sort of figure out on their own, even if it's do the reading and answer the questions and, construct the knowledge. A few things happen besides even leaving kids behind when it comes to knowledge that you can't really construct. I'm not going to construct out of nowhere the multiplication tables. I need somebody to help me with that. And actually, one of the most efficient ways to learn is to freaking memorize it. Now, that's not necessarily passive. The kid has to probably do something with it. Chanting, singing, memorizing flashcards, playing a game, whatever it is. They kind of have to engage directly with the material to really learn it. And especially if they're an average kid. Like I said, the genius might figure it out all by themselves, but most kids probably won't without some direct instruction. And there are a lot of other things. Kids don't learn grammar by figuring it out. Very, very bright, very verbally strong children will innately sort of figure out what's right and wrong, and they will write and speak accordingly, but they won't know why. They won't be able to correct mistakes if they do make one. And they won't be able to write at a higher and higher level because that takes a little bit more understanding of grammar and punctuation and a few other things. These are not things you can construct. And I don't know what the incentive would be to learn it by self-direction without somebody at least putting a goalpost out there for you and giving you some degree of direction on like why this matters and where to go get the information, and then teach you the skills with which to get the information. So this doesn't work very well past like, I don't know, 3rd grade for the average kid. The average kid, and then you add the school environment with all the distractions and everything, and now it's even fewer kids that it works for. You want to talk about things like project-based learning, experiential learning. This takes a lot of time, takes a lot of know-how on the part of the teacher to do it really well so that it does work for all the students and not just the kids who naturally take to it. And it just simply doesn't work in that kind of setting. There will always be those outliers. Like I said, I'm sure there's some unschooler out there going, look, my child learned how to do, quantum physics all by themselves by the age of 5. Congrats for you. Your child is an experiential learner and is very good at self-direction and probably has 140 or IQ or above. But your average kindergartner in, Charlotte, it doesn't. So what are we going to do? Keep banging our head against a brick wall and say, but Piaget said so, but Vygotsky said we just need some scaffolding and they'll get there. Well, that presupposes the teacher has the scaffolding skills, which means they have a deep knowledge of the subject. They have a deep understanding of each and every student in the class, where they are and what more they can handle on any given day, not just in general across the year, and that they can individualize their teaching across all those kids and scaffold accordingly. They can't, because they do have standardized tests they have to prepare the kids for, and they do have a lot of other things on their plate to deal with. So in theory, it's nice. In practice, it doesn't really work. But rather than admit that, they just keep coming up with justifications like equity and racism and diversity and cultural relevance, and it's not engaging enough. And, it's always something else wrong, not the theory. We cling to the theory like glue that knowledge is constructed. And I genuinely think that part of it is if they had to go back and admit that not all knowledge is constructed, or at a minimum, if it is, we don't have that kind of time. And these kids don't have those kind of skills, nor do the teachers. Then you'd have to start implementing more traditional methods of teaching. You would have to admit that the classical style has its upsides, that the people who've been proponents of it for so long have a point, that there is something called objective fact and objective knowledge that can actually be transmitted from person to person through direct instruction. And that would throw all of their other social theories out the window. How do we justify genders? How do we justify your identities? Which I hope you understand after listening to this whole explanation are obviously constructed, which is just a euphemism for made up out of thin air. So how do we let people do that? If we start acknowledging that there is such a thing as, objective truth, and, it kind of matters, and kids can't really learn everything they need to learn without it. So I see these theorists and these pedagogues and all these people clinging to constructivism like it is the be all end all. And no, I stand corrected. They're clinging to it. And whenever called out on it, you know what they do? They then go to behaviorism. They then go to, okay, well, all right, fine, you have a point, but we're still not going to admit that there's something that you can objectively define and quantify and teach using traditional methods. No, we're going to just use behavior. We're going to use behaviorism, Skinnerism. So we're going to like create discomfort, like not answering the question for the child. And the child will be so uncomfortable that their motivation to avoid the discomfort will drive discovery. It'll drive discovery, just like the dog trying to figure out how to get the food pellet to come out and to avoid, I don't want the pain, so I'm going to do the thing, or I want the food, so the bell, okay, the bell goes off, the food. That's what they do. They create uncomfortable situations so the kid then has to, but you know what kids do in that situation? When they're so uncomfortable, they cheat. Yeah, they cheat. As long as there's AI, as long as there's a machine, as long as there's somebody else's paper they can look at, as long as there is a quick and easy way to get around the discomfort and still turn the work in, that's what they'll do. Kids are not these like high-minded, perfectly ethical little creatures, especially when nobody's role modeling that, because of course we construct knowledge of ethics and morals too, don't you know? So we can't possibly, tell kids like this is right and that is wrong. They're going to experience it. And then of course we're still not going to tell them because that would be mean. So, I guess the consequence, but we don't really do those anymore either. So yeah, we'll just have to come up with a whole new framework of what is good and bad, and we'll base that on critical theory. Yeah, that makes sense, because that's constructed and made up BS too, which will just solidify how everything is just made up BS, and we will get the kids firmly, indoctrinated in this unmoored, hollow existence where nothing is real and nothing is within their power to grab onto and own. It's just all ether. Unless they can construct it and get other people to buy into their construction. 2 times 2 equals 5. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? No? Maybe 2 plus 2 equals 5. Yeah, that's it. 2 plus 2 equals 5. I just constructed that knowledge. It's mine. How dare you tell me it's not true? I just constructed it. Oh, you won't buy into my knowledge? How dare you? You see how this works? So when you see the word construct in the literature from your kid's school or teacher, that's what that means. They're just announcing to you, like, we're not going to be actually teaching your child. They're gonna, figure it out to a greater or lesser degree. Now, to be fair, they use a lot of these buzzwords. They don't freaking know, like, it's just what they say. Then you get into the classroom and you'll observe the teacher actually doing drills or actually doing something. So you're still going to have to interact with the teacher, interact with the school, and figure out what's actually going on, talk to your child, etc. It's not 100%. Deb doesn't know everything about every teacher in every school. Some teachers still have common sense and they do things, they say the words, blah, 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 word salad, and then do what they want anyway. So yay for you if you have one of those teachers. But that's not where the educational theory is right now, and has been for like 100 years. Just so you know. Okay, good talk.